Hey everyone! In today's video, we're gonna knit a hat together, and I'm so happy you want to join in. So for this pattern, you need some chunky wool yarn, 1 to 2 balls of yarn, and some circular knitting needles. So these are 10 millimeters, 40 centimeters long. So grab a yarn and let's get started. So let's start knitting. So grab a yarn and your needles, and let's find the end right here. All right, so here you can see the hat we're making. And the technique is rib stitch 1 by 1. And a few things that you need to know about that is the technique is every other stitch we knit stitch, and every other is purl stitch, which makes it very flexible and stretchy like this. And the amount of stitches you cast on needs to be an even number. So for this, I used 54 stitches. And my head is 54 centimeters measured from the back of my head over my ears and to the front of my forehead. So you can use that as reference. And since it's very stretchy, I think you can use this number of stitches for even if you have a little bit bigger head or even smaller. It all comes down to basically how tight you want your hat to be. But let's start knitting. So let's grab the yarn and your needles. Here. So to measure out how much yarn you need for the tail, and the tail is the piece of yarn that we use when we cast on. And one thing that I do is either if I have a flat project or something like this, I just use the width of the project. For this, I can measure around my head. So I just use the yarn, wrap it around my head, and here I have it. And then I go 2.5 approximately of this width of my project like this, and this is about the amount of yarn I need for casting on. So 2.5, 3 times the width of your project is a good go-to for measuring the tail. So let's start with making a slip knot, and this is how I do it. So I just wrap the yarn around my fingers, cross it over, slide the loop off, and just pull the yarn through like this. Grab your needle, tighten the yarn around one of the needles. And now for casting on, this is how I hold the yarn. So with the working yarn, the one that is attached to the big ball of yarn, I place that in between my index finger and my middle finger. And the other one, the tail, is above my thumb. And with the rest of my fingers, I hold both of the yarn tight like this. So to cast on, with the needle, we go underneath where the thumb is and above where the index finger is and through the loop. Then we just tighten with the tail. So again, underneath where the thumb is, above where the index finger is, and through the loop, and tighten with the tail. So again, underneath, above, and through the loop, and just tighten like that. So cast on the amount you need for your size, and remember the first slip knot count as the first stitch. So I'm casting on my final 2 plus 1. So I'm adding 1, and it's not a part of the pattern. It's just to use for when we connect this into a full circle. So one thing to look at before you turn this into a circle is make sure that all the stitches are straight. You do not want them to be twisted like this. Okay, so check before, so you have all the loops on the outside and all the knots on the inside. Then grab your needles. So I'm right-handed, therefore I hold my needles like this. And I want to slide these stitches a bit forward because that makes it easier to work. All right, so with my right, just make sure that you use the working yarn and not the tail. All right, so with the right needle, I'm going to take the first loop from the left side, slide it off like this, Then with my left needle, take the second loop on the right side, like this, and then kind of knit it. So we want to slide it off over the first one, like that, and just let it go. Now we have connected the circle. So now we can start knitting. So let's move on to the next step. I think it's a good thing to start with marking where the round starts and ends. So I use a ring like this, but it can be a safety pin or a piece of yarn. But I just put this ring around my right needle so I know where my round starts and begins. All right, so let's start with the knit stitch. So then we have the working yarn behind the left needle. So we go in from the front with the needle in the loop like this. Then we grab the yarn and pull it through and slide it off like that. With the purl stitch, we have the yarn in front of the needle. So underneath the yarn and in front of the loop, and then we slide the yarn underneath the needle and pull it through like that and just slide it off. And again, the knit stitch in front, through the loop, hook the yarn and pull through, slide it off. The yarn in front of the needle, so underneath, hook the yarn and pull through and just slide it off. I'm going to make a few more and then show you how you can spot the difference between the two stitches. So for knit stitch, behind the needle, we go in from the front, grab the yarn and pull through like that and just slide it off. Working yarn in front of the needle, so underneath, through the loop, grab the yarn and pull through, slide it off. Now you can kind of see that the knit stitches look like this, and here we have a little purl, so that's for the purl stitch. So you don't have to keep count, but just make sure that you have every other stitch so you can see a purl on every other stitch, and that's easy to just remember what stitch you are on. And again, so now we have made a purl stitch. Now we're going to make a knit stitch. So again, yarn behind the needle, dive down, hook the yarn and pull through like that, slide it off. Yarn in front, underneath, hook the yarn and pull through. And just keep going all the way around, and I will meet you at the end and show you how we continue with the next round. So now we're at the second round, and the only thing you actually have to think about is we knit the knit stitch on top of a knit stitch and the purl stitch on top of a purl stitch. So I started my round with the knit stitch, so I'm just going to start with the same one right here, like this, and then I do the purl stitch on top of a purl stitch. And that is the only thing you need to remember so you get to that rib stitch look, because that's a technique we're knitting. And just keep going all the way around and around until you reach the desirable height for your hat. I knitted 36 rounds for my hat, just as a reference. So you just knit as many as you like. There's no right or wrong here. Depending on how big your project is, you might have to add more yarn along the way. And this is how I tie 2 strings of yarn together. First, we grab one of the yarns and tie a knot around the other string, like this, and then we pull it really tight. With the other one, we repeat the same thing. So tie a knot, like this, and pull it really tight. Make sure both are really tight so they get small, and then we just pull them together like this. And then we can just cut the ends off like that. And now you can keep knitting. So when you get to the point and you feel like, okay, I'm done with the size of my hat, it's time to close the top. So first I remove my marker, and then for help, I work with a crochet needle. You can also use a big needle if that works better for you. But we start with cutting off the yarn about 20-25 centimeters maybe, like that. And then one by one, or a few at a time, depending on how it feels for you, I slide these stitches off my knitting needle, and then with my crochet needle, I pull the yarn through the loops and I work my way all the way around. So just be careful so they don't get lost. Like that. So I slide a few more off. Like this. And just work all the way around. And I will meet you there. So now I'm at the final ones, and I remove my knitting needles like this, and then we pull them all the way through, and then it's just to close the top, and I'm just gonna pull the string really tight so we close the top of the hat like this. Let's see if you can see it, and pull it as tight as you can. And with the knitting needle, I'm just gonna dive down somewhere around or in between two stitches. Let's see if you can see. So we go in the middle like that, and I just want to pull it a little bit closer. Then we pull the yarn through, and I make a knot and tighten it really hard and secure like that. And then I like to get the yarn in on the inside. Let me see if I can find it. Like that. And then I pull my hat inside out. From the inside, I just make a second knot, just to make sure it's really tight and secure, like that. Then you can hide the tail in between some stitches like this. Like this. And then you can just cut it off when you're ready. So that feels good. Just kind of cut it off. And remember the tail from the start. If you haven't already hidden this or hid this, I do the same thing. I just go in between some of the stitches with either a needle or the crochet needle. Just back and forth a few times. And then I cut it off. Then you're done. Then you can start wearing your hat. You made it, your very own cozy hat. Great job. So thank you so much for knitting with me and Mio today. And don't forget to check out more videos on our website. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.